I want to talk about how you use your detective skills to investigate the evidence for Jesus. But before that, I want to get to the issue of how you ended up a skeptic. What was it about your life or your experience or perspective that caused you to be a doubter and to be actually a pretty outspoken atheist?
I think probably a lot of people in this room maybe were where I was. I just didn't have anybody in my family who was a Christian. I was raised in Southern California. My parents were not Christians. My dad was very committed atheist. He's also a detective before me. Some of my cases I reopened were his old cases.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just felt like, hey, if I can solve this case and make my dad look really bad, wouldn't that be awesome? Right? But I never did solve his old cases, but I tried a couple times. But he was somebody who had a lot of skepticism, because I think skepticism, if you think about it, serves you really well as a detective, right? If you trust people and everything they say, well, then no one's ever going to go to jail. But if you start thinking, I wonder if he's lying to me about that, well, then the whole thing starts. So I think that kind of skepticism was part of my family. And then also I was really sarcastic about the few Christians I knew. So I had like friends who were in law enforcement they would tell you they're Christians, and they'd actually try to talk to you about their faith. But if you asked them, well, why is this true? Or why do you think you can trust the Bible? Or, just simple questions, they had really no answer for me. And these are people who were very committed to evidence in every part of their professional life, but when it came to their spiritual life, they didn't think that was even necessary. And I thought, well, I'm sorry, I can't just turn off the way I think to get over here in this box with you guys. And then the other Christians that we met were people we took to jail. And they would say, I remember taking a guy to jail after we watched him do a bank robbery. And I was on a surveillance team. I've got him in my car. He's handcuffed now. We're going back to the station, and he's telling me about his conversion story. And I thought to myself, really? So I've got to be one of these two groups in order to call myself a Christian? And I don't need either one of those. So I just stayed away from it. But I would mock it, because the few people I knew were pretty easy to mock. I hate to say that, but it was true, right? And so I just knew that was not going to be for me. And my kids were very young. They were like just maybe at the time, maybe 2 and 4, right around there.
So what people might not understand about the law is that most crimes, I think virtually everything, has a statute of limitations. So if you commit a bank robbery, and if you don't get caught for a period of time, 5 years or 10 years or whatever the statute is, you can never be prosecuted for that crime. But there is no statute of limitations for murder. That you are always going to be hunted to some degree, hopefully, and held accountable for that, even if it's 10, 20, 30 years old.
That's right. So we have it basically only closes by way of arrest, or if you think our suspect is dead and you can demonstrate why you think he's your suspect, sometimes we'll close it that way. But for the most part, they stay open, and that's what we did here. We looked at all of our unsolved murders, and we said, hey, how could we turn some of these into solved cases? And given that really, for the most part, they're all terrible cases, okay? Because there's only 2 ways to make a case, right? You can make a case with direct evidence or with indirect evidence. Sometimes you can use a combination of both. But direct evidence is one kind of thing. It's eyewitness testimony. So if you don't have somebody who saw the crime and can say, I saw him do it, you don't have a direct evidence case. You've got an indirect evidence case. You've got to make it some other way. And indirect evidence is also called circumstantial evidence. And most of you, when you hear that word circumstantial evidence, you're thinking to yourself, oh, that's just crummy. Because in our culture, we think it's just a circumstantial case. It's not very good. All they have is circumstance. That's like 80 to 85% of all criminal cases in America, folks, are made indirectly. So, and we actually have a jury instruction in which judges tell juries they are not to consider direct evidence as having any more weight than indirect evidence. They're to be given the exact same consideration. So I knew there were times when I would rather have an indirect case, because witnesses lie all the time. And you can be wrong about the indirect evidence, but it's not because it's trying to lie to you. You just misread it. But witnesses do lie. And so when I was looking at the Gospels, I just needed to know, these allegedly were eyewitness accounts, at least 2 of them. The other 2 were reported to the writer as from an eyewitness, Luke and Mark. So the question then becomes, do I trust these are telling me the truth about what Jesus... And I just got interested because Susie was interested.
So a circumstantial case could be an airtight case.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our cases, all of them have been 100% circumstantial. with lots of unanswered questions. The case you saw on the little clip, we had lots of unanswered questions there. We didn't know how he killed her. He got rid of her body and claimed she ran off. So for 30 years, we had no body missing. And we started to work it as a homicide. I couldn't tell you how he killed her, where he killed her, how he got rid of her body, how he moved her car, how he did all that stuff he said he did. I could not explain any of that for the jury. They found him guilty in 4 hours. And they did it.
And then he later confessed.
And then he confessed at sentencing and gave us the location of the body. So we know he's guilty, but we had no way to answer those questions. So if you're in this room right now and you're thinking to yourself, if you're going to make a case for Christianity, I got some unanswered questions. Get over it. That's the nature of every criminal case, by the way. The question is, are the unanswered questions you have really deal killers or not? And so while we had a bunch of unanswered questions, none of those were deal killers for our jury. So I think for me, when I realized as an atheist that the standard of proof in criminal trials is not beyond a possible doubt, because you never get beyond a possible doubt. You think you know things right now beyond a possible doubt? What would that be? What do you think you know beyond a possible doubt? You just tell me, I can give you a possible doubt. Right? But we get in our car every morning, we start the car like it's going to start up and like it's not going to explode in our face. Why? Because it's possible it's got a bomb underneath, but probably not reasonable, because our standard is beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond a possible doubt. So as an atheist, I always thought, well, the standard's got to be beyond a possible doubt. Really? No, nothing's beyond a possible doubt. It's beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's where I found myself after examining the Gospels.